Hi, everyone. Instead of taking time from the PLC to go over this in detail, we wanted to try something a little different. We are bringing you a video to watch instead, and myself or Ms. Skillern will be available at a PLC to answer questions that you may have. But we do want to share this important information. We have EOC spring testing coming up, but at the same time, several of you who have English learners have already started to receive information through Elevation, all online, and we want to make sure that you are prepared to be able to ensure that your students are taken care of in preparation for EOC, even if you do not teach an EOC subject, because it is possible that you have English learners who are retesters, as well as other students who are not SPED, not 504, not ELL, and are still going to retest. There are lots of information out there that you see circulating, but I'm hoping that this is nice, short, and sweet for you. You will receive 3 documents. The first document will actually look like this one, and this is basically your cheat sheet. This is what you want to refer to, because depending on the student, in some cases, a committee will make a decision as far as what type of accommodation they will receive. And in other cases, you will have students who don't get LEP, 504, or special ed services, or just a student in general education, but they also have an opportunity to take advantage of accessibility features and designated supports on EOC. So this is your teacher cheat sheet, and what you will find is you see this table, and it has group 1, group 2, group 3, group 4, and then you have essentially like a little glossary that tells you ELL means English Language Learner. Elevation is an online software program teachers use to submit LPAC forms and access to student data. And then we have the LPAC, which is the committee that makes decisions for all English learners. As teachers, most of you have to sit through 504 NARD committee meetings, but for the LPAC, you don't. Instead, you submit forms rather than have to attend committee meetings regarding your individual students. On the bottom portion of this document, you see a big blue box, and it says Journal tab. Why? Because in some cases, you do have to provide documentation that isn't 504, isn't special education, isn't elevation. It's for those other students. And the journal tab is such an important aspect in proving that that a student is actually benefiting from certain accommodations, designated supports, and you want to make sure that the committee has enough documentation to make a determination to allow your students to have those supports on testing day. The other document that you have access to actually looks like this, and this is the accessibility features document. The third document is going to be this one that's called designated supports that may be locally approved for the 18-19 year. So those were 3 documents that you have access to. The first document, I'm going to go in depth, and these are provided by Lead Forward, and thank goodness they created these because it makes it easier as a teacher to understand what your students have access to. So those 2 Lead Forward documents, the first one I will go into is the accessibility features. The accessibility features are available to any student. No one has to make an approval or give an approval for the student to have. You are the teacher, and if you say, you know what, my students benefit from this, then you can actually go ahead and request that. At a later time, Ms. Welch will be able to provide you information as far as how she's going to need for you to communicate what you are requesting for your student. And remember, you don't have to be an EOC tested teacher or EOC tested subject. You could be a teacher who teaches a subject with retesters. And so you have the responsibility to make sure that you take all these pieces into consideration. So let's look at them. What are accessibility features that students can have? They can have the signing of test administration directions for a student who's deaf or hard of hearing. Number two, there could be some translation, but it's only on the directions. So EOCs have instructions, and it is only that portion that can be translated in the native language of the English learner. So if your students would benefit from it, then you can request it. And this would be appropriate for your newcomers, which is a small segment of our EL population. Number three, this is important, not just for English teachers, but math, science, and social studies. Number three says you can allow a student to use a bilingual dictionary with word-to-word translations for math, science, and social studies. So everyone should have about 3 copies of glossary, bilingual glossary, or word-to-word translation, or maybe in your classroom, your students use their phones to use an online resource, or maybe you have Chromebooks. I don't know, but if this is something that your students would benefit from, no one has to approve, you just have to request. Number 4, allowing a student to read the test aloud to facilitate comprehension, which includes the use of PVC pipe or recording device. Number 5, reading aloud or sending the expository or persuasive writing prompt to any student who requests the assistance. We're going to skip number 6 because that's elementary. And we're going to skip number 7 because it's elementary and middle school. But look at number 8, making the following assistive tools available. Various types of scratch paper, dry erase boards that can be erased, colored overlays, blank place markers, magnifying devices, various types of highlighters, color pencils, other tools, amplification devices, projection devices. If these are things that your students benefit from, you can request it, but you know, there are tools that are involved. So if you're requesting it, it's something that you probably already do in the classroom. So be prepared because Ms. Welch may ask you for those tools that you have in the classroom available for your students if it is that you request it. I'm not talking about scratch paper, but I am talking about dry erase boards, blank placemakers, colored overlays. If you're requesting it, then we're going to assume you have it, and Ms. Welch will get in contact with you. Number 9, giving permission for a student to use tools to minimize distractions or maintain focus. 10, individual small group administrations. 11, reminding students to stay on task. You know, we have a lot of students that need reminders. So you can specifically request for that. Number 12, photocopying or enlarging the following non-secure test materials. Those are going to be more for, you know, students who have vision problems, which more than likely they're already 504. So once again, accessibility features, that is the official term to refer to when you want something for a student that doesn't require any kind of approval process. Oh, that one is quick and easy. The next document that I'm going to go over in detail is going to be this designated supports document. Whoops. Okay, your designated supports document that requires approval, either through 504, LPAC, ARD, or if the student doesn't belong to any of those, a general ed student, those are going to go through me, Mina, or Ms. Skillern, our other Dean of Instruction. So what does it consist of? Well, let me tell you guys, there's a lot of designated supports that are available for students. And what Lead Forward did is they created a 4-page document. And in the 4-page document, they created 4 groups. And they did that to kind of keep all the red tape and the bureaucratic stuff that requires paperwork and proof and evidence in a way that's easy to comprehend. So there's group 1, group 2, group 3, group 4. And all of those are shown in the very top of each page in the orange section. Notice how it says group 1 right there. Group 1, and then page 2, group 2, page 3 in the orange, you see group 3, and page 4, you see group 4. So what are the differences? Well, in the orange, it tells you what the differences are. But if you ever just need a quick cheat sheet, you have that other handout that I already talked about to refer to. Everything is situated here. I guess I can color code it because that would make sense to make it orange, so that way they correlate. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'll make it orange. And you have group 1, 2, 3, and 4. So group 1 is basically any student. This group 1, if you go to the lead forward document, these in blue are all the designated supports available to any student who's taking the EOC, but it's only available to them if they meet eligibility criteria. So where is that? Well, it's going to be in the 4th column. The purple tells you eligibility criteria. And if you look for, which is what I like and what Lead Forward likes, the criteria is basically this. You can request for the designated support as long as the student routinely uses the support during classroom instruction and classroom testing. And you see it repeated over and over. I'm highlighting in blue as I go. The student routinely and effectively uses this support during classroom instruction and classroom testing. So that means if you're asking for it, it's because the students are used to having it in instruction and on their assessment. Is it too late if you haven't used it? No, because you still have January and February and March to see what it's like if a student is given the support, and then see what it's like if they're not given the support. So what are the designated supports that are available to group 1 students? That's Braille, basic transcribing. Here's one that's popular for kids that don't belong to a special program. That's individualized structured reminders. And you see a description of what that means, which I'm kind of highlighting in yellow there. And they give you examples. How cool is that? They give you examples. So individualized structured reminders is one that is popular for our gen ed kids, as is, let's see, supplemental aids. There are supplemental aids available for English, for math, science, and social studies subjects on the EOC. So this document is really nice because they're saying any student can have this so long as they meet the eligibility criteria, which is the teacher ensures the student uses it routinely, independently, effectively, and so forth. So how do you prove that? Well, you have to go to the journal tab in Aware, and you have to document every time you use it. Now, when I say every time, I would make it a practice to go in at the end of the month, at the end of a unit, or at the end of the grading period to make entries. And this blue box gives you an example of the 4 things we're looking for. 1, what was the name of the test and when was it given? Was it short cycle assessment 5? Was it unit assessment 4? What was the name of it? What was the name of the designated support? Was it a supplemental aid? And if so, what was it? A mnemonic device? Number 3, what was the test score? What did the student get? Did the student get a 72, a 52, an 82? What was it? And number 4, tell us what happened. Here are examples. The student's test scores improved with supports. And here's another example. The student's test score decreased without the supports. So you're showing what it looks like when they have it, and you're showing what it looks like when they don't have it. That's it. You just got to keep up with entering that information throughout the journal tab for January, February, and March. And that's as easy as it is. That's group 1 students, though. Keep that in mind. What about group 2? Group 2 students can get anything that group 1 students get plus this: large print, extra time within the same day, which is until 4 p.m., and they can have an oral and signed administration of the assessment. So those are the options that are available to them. Now, if you're going for any of these that are listed on group 2, you have to look at the eligibility criteria. And this is where it gets a little confusing, but keep this in mind. Students who are eligible for group 2 designated supports not only have to use the support in your classroom routinely and effectively, but they may also have to meet another condition under the column eligibility criteria. So I'm going to look at extra time, because extra time is something that a student may be able to qualify for if they're not SPED, not 504, or not an English learner. And so what would be an example? Well, let's look at everything I'm highlighting. You use it routinely, and the student is able to effectively use other accessibility features or designated supports to address this need, and meets one of the following. Pay attention to D. English teachers, this is one where this will absolutely rely on what you can contribute as far as information regarding the students. There's documented evidence of reading difficulties. We have a lot of students that are struggling to read on grade level, and it's not something that just happened all of a sudden in high school. There's information, there's data to prove that it's been an ongoing challenge since middle school and even elementary. And if that is the case, then you may be able to make a case for that, so long as you have information in the journal tab typed in. Remember, you have to use a journal tab if they're not 504, if they're not SPED, and if they're not EL. What happens? Well, here on the far right, it tells you who has the authority to make the decision based on the documentation provided by you in the journal tab, and also in the student's cumulative folder that we have on file for them here in the office. And that authority for any other student that isn't already in a special program is the appropriate team of people at the campus level. Here it says RTI, Student Assistance Team. Myself and Ms. Gillard are in charge of that. So we would be looking at it. So if you have questions about specific cases, we are here, we are available. Another one that I want to focus your attention to is oral and signed administration. This is available to kids as well who are not served in a special program, because in the eligibility area, it says has documented evidence of reading difficulties. That's why I wanted to bring this up. So now you know what group 2 is all about. I'm going to move through this. I'm going to page 3 where it says group 3, designated supports. If you have kids that are in group 3, then that means they're eligible in group 3. That means they have access for group 1 designated supports, group 2 designated supports, and group 3 designated supports as well. So what is a group 3 designated support? Content and language. That's it. And this is restricted, according to the orange, only to SPED, Section 504, or ELL students. If you sit in the ARD 504 meetings, you receive paperwork that pretty much tells you what accommodations or designated supports the students will receive on EOC, but that is not the case for ELs. For ELs, you build the case. How are you going to build the case? You're going to fill out your forms from Elevation, and those forms are called instructional accommodations. And remember, it's basically a checklist where you're like, click, 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 and you pick what you think, or not what you think. You pick from a list, a drop-down list that indicates what you have provided to the kids. Maybe you provide gestures for added emphasis. Maybe you provide extra time. Maybe you provide clarification, or maybe you provide oral administration of the test. There are so many things that are in that drop-down list that you as a teacher select. And today I'm recording this January 11th, and I know that everyone who has an EL has already received an instructional accommodations form that is due at the end, towards the end of January. So as you fill it out and you look through that list, be sure to check off those supports that you provide already in the classroom, because that takes the place of the journal tab. The elevation form is so much easier to fill out than what you were used to in the journal tab. All right, page 4. Page 4, we have designated supports that are only available to who? And it tells you right there, special ed or section 504. So this isn't even available to English learners. So as you can see, the higher we move up from group 1, which is anybody, group 2, it becomes a little restricted. It's still everybody, but there's more conditions for eligibility. Group 3, it's not everyone. It's not. It's just students who are served through special programs. And by the time you hit group 4, it's at that point not even all students served in special programs. It's just students exclusively served by special ed and section 504. So that's it. That was the information I want to share with you. I will be available at your PLC to answer questions after you have watched this video. Thank you.